My reminiscences flow around the villa, built by my father, aged 23 to 24 in the late 20s. It became the hub and pivot for the society in Rhodes and from Italy and Athens for sailing, fishing, shooting, and subsequently also a part of the history of Rhodes. My father's love of sailing, coupled with that for Greece and the Greek islands, brought him to Rhodes, in the company of yachting friends, where he discovered, I quote, the best red-legged partridge in the world. I learnt only recently he was given preferential treatment, with two others, to own land on Trianda Bay, which stretched to the seashore. A catastrophe for me now, but most desirable then. The reason being he was judged to be, by virtue of family, social and business connections, able to attract to Rhodes the type of tourist which was sought. The Rhodians became his people. They in turn took him to their hearts. Proven movingly this past Christmas, when quite by chance I sat in the Evangelismo Cathedral next to his gardener's daughter, who told me her father had died with my father's name on his lips, as he'd been responsible for their family's survival during the occupation, sending them money regularly with one of his agents or wireless operators. My father also remembered in his will the man who carried his gun when climbing the hills of Salako, who, when he heard a Rees was back in the villa, came dressed in his Rhodian costume, bearing gifts of almonds, eggs, and his garden produce. Also on my return, I went to the Hotel de la Rose to be greeted by the white-haired Russian maître-d'hôtel, who kissed my hand with tears in his eyes, saying, "You remind me of the good times. Your father would anchor his yacht opposite and would send the launch to fetch the champagne. By contrast, our drinking water was brought by donkey, and the ice blocks from a factory for an ice chest." My father kept his horse at the villa and rode daily, and I had a piglet called Marco, who followed me like a dog even to the seashore. However, one day we were served roast pork for lunch, and it was never understood by me why I did not see Marco again. The bevy of yachts would go off as a pack, and on their return the villa rang with laughter and conviviality. The yachtsmen joined with local Italian friends and professionals, mixing with the Greek families, my family, such as a cousin, Ietaxili, who became the wife of the Greek Prime Minister, Marchesini, and friends from Alexandria, like the parents of Claude Vincent Blanc, wife of Lawrence Darrow. Apart from sun, sea, tennis, shooting, fishing, and partying, amusements were simple. Sundays saw excursions to Profitili, snows at Cervo, to play boccia, Italian bowls, and eat the scrumptious spaghetti prepared by the Italian padrone. At full moon, a walk along the walls of the old town. Food consisted mainly of the successes of the shooting parties, supplemented by vegetables grown in our garden, and a magnificent catch of fresh fish from the yacht's nets put down nightly, and from in front of the villa. On the return of the yacht, prior to berthing in Mandraki harbour, it would sail in close to the villa, where, to acknowledge that it had been seen, a Union Jack was run up on the roof, whose rope I was allowed to help pull. On one occasion, on arrival, the police were waiting for my father, and he was taken to the station to be reprimanded. And because he had a fierce patriotism and disapproved of the fascist regime, but also had a childlike joy in teasing, he maintained that the flag was on English property and he would continue to fly it, as he did on his car, just to annoy, and indeed painted a section of the Union Jack around the villa's tower, which caused him much mirth, as the German general and staff spent the war under the English flag. What was not so funny was that the fascist secret police used to hide in the trees to follow the goings-on of the villa. Some afternoons I would be taken in the chauffeur-driven car with my nanny to play in the hills at a farm in Casa dei Pini, or visit the dried fruits factory of an Italian friend called Agliotti. and he plied me with raisins, figs and apricots. I also remember the delicious peaches from Peveragno's village, built Sicilian style, where the villagers had been transplanted from Sicily and were to continue their peach growing. The Italians also introduced the technique of Chianti making. One of my father's yachting friends, George Calambocchiri, as a result of the knowledge he acquired then, came with David Sutherland and the SBS as interpreter for the raid on Maritza airfield, where much damage was caused to enemy planes. He was caught, as were the two Rhodian guides, whose busts are at the Mandraki bus stop. We also had to be here in August for the Feast of the Virgin at Cremastin, to whom purportedly I owe my existence, my mother having been unable to conceive over a period of years. She made a vow to the Holy Virgin on the 15th of August, and I was born on 23rd of May, 9 months later, which was also my mother's birthday. A gift of a silver lamp now hanging in front of the miraculous Virgin was a gift of thanksgiving from my parents. The other important celebration was my parents' wedding anniversary, the villa having been completed for their honeymoon on 30th August, when in addition to the party in the villa, a large palm-covered pavilion was erected with a long trestle table where the yacht's crew, the staff, gardeners and families had a lamb roasting on a spit and joined in the festivities. Apparently, our Sudanese man-servant Hussein would continue the revelry at a local taverna and dance with a leg of a chair or table in his mouth and a child on it. The locals, never having seen a black man before, were convinced he was the devil. Alas, good times were soon to vanish. As war clouds gathered, my father's yachting had stood him in good stead, and with his intimate knowledge and great love of Greece, the islands and Turkish coast, he was a natural choice to become head of MI6 and MI9, with the headquarters of the raiding forces in Smyrna, Izmir. One of his kaiks calling monthly at Rhodes. One of his agents here in Rhodes, a wireless operator, was Aleko Vembo, the brother of Sofia Vembo, whom he personally escorted by kayak from Turkey to also get out of Athens, the Vera Lale Anderson of Greece, someone who also worked for him and was Alexei Lava, brother of the Marina who married Sai Salzberger of the New York Times. According to the London surgeon, his last words were, "Patch me up so that I can see the blue Aegean once again." At the outbreak of war, the villa was taken over by the Italian Flying Corps, one of whom was a descendant of the famous 19th century poet Giacomo Leopardi, and by a quirk of fate, my son Robin worked in his hometown of Recanati, becoming friends with his grandson, whose mother married a distant relative. Subsequently, the villa was occupied by the German general and staff, where a jetty was built for his plane. A pillbox can still be seen, and having got wind of my father's activities, the villa was thoroughly searched by the Aberville. At the liberation, the villa was ransacked and everything portable taken, and my mother had neither the heart or the means to return, so it was rented until I took it over in the 60s, soon after the filming of The Guns of Navarone. The film crew lived at the villa, and sets were painted there. Gregory Peck and Anthony Quinn stayed at the Miramare, and also one featuring Yul Brynner, and several others were done here. The villa has meant happy holidays for my children and grandchildren, and there are my friends, which they still enjoy. it has been primarily, despite its vicissitudes, a haven of peace and laughter. The way of life has not changed unduly, despite the release of Darrell's words, the infernal wreckage of war. And my two small boys would go to the farm, where Elena Hotel now stands, to fetch the milk and fresh eggs, and we got our fresh bread from the nearby bakery with an open stone oven, where for a few drachma you could also take your roasting and baking pans and have your meal cooked there. The only grocery store was an adjacent wooden shack, where mail and telegrams were delivered. Things like extending ladders did not exist, and due to the national attitude regarding time at disregards, which because I worked was at a premium, in desperation my son and I came out here with commercial rollers and painted the villa ourselves. I did, however, manage to get drinking water piped to the villa. We're still relying on our well water for watering. The windmill had taken down and a pump installed, also in order to express my links and love for Rhodes heritage. I erected to base my archaeological thesis for my diploma in conservation in Florence, which we could admire the architects museum and symbol of that in Florence. Darrell opined, and when I wonder if the past was all a dream, I gaze at the summer Mediterranean in all its magnetic blues. It reassures me. I continue, and I hope, because the love for Rhodes runs in my veins.